Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Diriya Nashtaprayeshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 7, Lord Krishna instructs Uddhav. Text 42 onwards. So Krishna is speaking about that Brahman who was speaking with King Yadu about the 24 gurus that he had. So further speaking, he says, Antarhitascha sthira jangameshu brahmatma bhavena samanvayena vyapta vyavachedam asangamatmano munir nabhastvam vitatasya bhavayet. A thoughtful sage, even while living within the material body, should understand himself to be pure spirit soul. Similarly, one should see that the spirit soul enters within all forms of life, both moving and non-moving, and that the individual souls are thus all-pervading. The sage should further observe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a super soul is simultaneously present within all things. Both the individual soul and the super soul can be understood by comparing them to the nature of the sky. Although the sky extends everywhere and everything rests within the sky does not mix with anything, nor can it be divided by anything. So he compared sky to the soul and super soul by its quality that it extends everywhere, everything rests on him, it doesn't mix with anything, and it cannot be divided. Although air exists within the sky or space is different from air. Even in the absence of air, space or sky is present. Just like if we go beyond the gravitational force of Earth, the sky is still there, air is not. All material objects are situated within space or within the vast material sky. But the sky remains undivided, and although accommodating all objects, never actually mixes with anything. In the same way, one can understand the situation of both the individual soul and the super soul. The individual soul is all-pervading because there are innumerable jivatmas which enter within all things. Yet, as confirmed in the Vedic literature, each individual atma remains infinitesimal. So they are everywhere, but every individual atma is localized, but atmas are everywhere. The Shvetashvatar Upanishad states, when the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again, each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is a measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. The same is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms which are measured as 1/10,000 of the upper portion of the hair. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, is all-pervading because he himself is personally present everywhere. The Lord is known as Advaita or indivisible. Thus, the same unique personality of Godhead exists everywhere, just like the sky, and yet is not attached to anything, although everything is resting within him. Everything is resting within him. He is all-pervading, but he is not attached to anything. The Lord himself has confirmed this analysis of his all-pervasiveness in Bhagavad Gita as an almighty wind blowing everywhere, always rests in ethereal space. Know that in the same manner, all beings rest in me. Therefore, although both the Jiva soul and the super soul are said to be all-pervading, it should be remembered that there are innumerable individual Jiva souls, whereas there is only one Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is always supreme, and one who is actually a thoughtful sage never doubts the supreme position of the Lord. So that is like sky. That he learned from sky. Tejo abannamyer bhaver meghadhyar vayuneritah asprishyate nabhastadvat kalasrishtyar gunah puman. Although the mighty wind blows clouds and storms across the sky is never implicated or affected by these activities. Similarly, the spirit soul is not actually changed or affected by contact with the material nature. Although the living entity enters within a body made of earth, water, and fire, and although he is impelled by the three modes of nature created by eternal time, his eternal spiritual nature is never actually affected. So spirit soul cannot be changed or affected. It just consciousness gets covered over. Although the sky appears to be affected by the mighty movements of wind, rain, hurricanes, lightning, and thunder, etc., the sky, being very subtle, is actually not affected, but is rather the background for such visible activities. Similarly, although the material body and mind undergo innumerable changes, such as birth and death, happiness and distress, love and hate, eternal living entity is merely the background for such activities. The spirit soul, being most subtle, is not actually affected, only due to misidentification with the superficial activities of the body and mind. Does the soul undergo terrible distresses within the material world? This is because of misidentification with our body and mind. Although soul is beyond anything of this material world. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya has pointed out that the individual living entity must struggle to revive his divine spiritual qualities. The living entity is part and parcel of the supreme entity called Krishna. And as such, the individual soul is also a reservoir of all godly qualities. The personality of Godhead, however, automatically manifests these qualities without any hindrance, whereas the conditioned soul must struggle to revive such qualities. Thus, although both the personality of Godhead and the personality of the living entity are eternal and transcendental, personality of Godhead is always supreme. By realizing all this with clear intelligence, the conditioned soul can rise to the spiritual platform, because this is the first step of self-realization. Who am I? And that it's easy to understand theoretically, but the realization is difficult. So by realizing all this with clear intelligence, the conditioned soul can rise to the spiritual platform. So realization is difficult because we are so conditioned to live in the bodily concept of life. We're so conditioned. Further, he says, Swacha prakrititah snigdho madhurya stirtha bhunranam muni punatyapam mitram ikshopasparsha kirtana. O king, a saintly person is just like water. Now he's learning from water, because he is free from all contamination, gentle by nature, and by speaking, creates a beautiful vibration like that of flowing water. Just by seeing, touching, or hearing such a saintly person, the living entity is purified, just as one is cleansed by contact with pure water. Thus, a saintly person, just like a holy place, purifies all those who contact him, because he always chants the glories of the Lord. The words apam mitram, just like water, can also be read as aghan mitram, which means that a saintly person purifies all living entities by accepting them as mitram, or his personal friends, and saves them from the sinful reactions, aghat. And here it doesn't say a saintly person only purifies only human beings or only Hindus. No, all living entities. Because we have to see, we have to go beyond the bodily concept of life. We have to see the soul. The conditioned living entity falsely identifies with his gross material body and subtle mind, and thus falls from the platform of spiritual knowledge. A conditioned living being is always lusty for material sense gratification. If he does not acquire it, he becomes angry. Sometimes he is so obsessed with fear of losing his material gratification that he enters a stage approaching madness. And this is what we see. If somebody is afraid of losing what he has materially, he can do crazy things. He can do everything to in his capacity to stop it from losing. It's madness. A saintly person, however, is like pure water, free from all contamination and capable of purifying all things. Just as pure water is transparent, a saintly person transparently manifests the personality of Godhead within his heart. Such love of Godhead is the reservoir of all happiness. Water makes a most pleasing vibration as it flows in cascades. And similarly, the sound vibration of the Lord's pure devotee, who is saturated with the glories of the Lord, is most charming and beautiful. Thus, by studying the nature of water, one can understand the symptoms of a pure devotee of the Lord. So this is how he's thinking when he saw water, pure flowing water, compared it to the saintly person. And here it's very nicely it is written, water makes a most pleasing vibration as it flows and cascades. And similarly, the sound vibration of the Lord's pure devotee, who is saturated with the glories of the Lord, or saturated with the qualities of the Lord, with the love of Lord, is most charming and beautiful. And this is the experience of all the devotees. Whenever we hear Srila Prabhupada's chanting, although it's very simple chanting, very simple when he's singing, but it's so refreshing and and it brings one also close to Krishna. Although there are so many wonderful devotees, they have the wonderful kirtans and the way they have chanted. It's very nice, no doubt about it. But Prabhupada's chanting is just tops them all. It's just his purity. It brings out the chanting. So one doesn't need music lessons to chant purely. Yes, music lessons are important if one wants to technically know how to chant or sing with in tune with the musical instruments. But to chant, which comes from the heart of a pure devotee, that is just totally out of this world. Tejasvi tapsa dipto durdharshor darbhajana sarva bhaksho api yuktatma nadatte malamagnivat. Saintly persons become powerful by execution of austerities. Their consciousness is unshakable because they do not try to enjoy anything within the material world. Such naturally liberated sages accept foodstuffs that are offered to them by destiny. And if by chance they happen to eat contaminated food, they are not affected, just like fire, which burns off contaminated substances that are offered to it. So if by chance they happen to eat contaminated food, it can happen because they just accept anything and everything that are offered to them by destiny. The word Udar Bhajan indicates that a saintly person eats only to keep body and soul together and not for sense gratification. One should eat palatable foodstuffs to maintain one's mind in a cheerful mood. However, one should not eat luxuriously because this will cause sex desire and laziness. A saintly person is always a perfect gentleman and is never greedy or lusty. Although Maya tries to defeat him by offering different material allurements, ultimately these attractive material features are themselves defeated by the spiritual power of a saintly person. Thus, one should never disrespect a spiritually advanced personality, but should worship him reverentially. To carelessly approach a Krishna conscious personality is just like carelessly approaching fire, which immediately burns if not handled properly. The Lord does not excuse mistreatment of a pure devotee. So sometimes people, without understanding the purity and the blessings of the Lord on a saintly person, so they try to do some jokes with him, or jokingly, or just for fun, they try to. Sometimes I've heard of that people try to feed him some meat or some liquor without the saintly person understanding this is meat. So if out of innocence he eats it, and people think, oh, this is very funny and weird, but they all have to pay for that. They don't understand. We're not supposed to joke, carelessly approach a Krishna conscious personality. If out of mistake or unknowingly we feed something, that's different. But knowingly making fun and feeding him something we are not supposed to, then that can result in great offense. But a saintly person at the same time, he is like fire. Even if he is fed something he doesn't know it is contaminated, he can just burn off all the reactions. It's not a big deal for him. Because Krishna is sitting in his heart. The main thing is Krishna. Krishna can take care of everything and anything. How he protects his devotees, it is just marvelous. Just like when Pandavas were in the forest and Draupadi had that Akshay Patra. It was given to her by sun god or fire god, I forgot. And so the condition was she can have unlimited amount of food from that Akshay Patra, as long as she's serving everybody else, as long as she hasn't eaten first. Then it will provide unlimited amount of food and whatever she wanted. So Duryodhana arranged for Durvasa Muni to go to the forest with his 10,000 disciples to be the guest of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And he said, go in the evening when Draupadi has eaten, so they have time to serve you. The Durvasa Muni didn't understand the plan of Duryodhana, the wicked plan of Duryodhana. And he went. And he met Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj is Maharaj, he is a Kshatriya. He said, Muniva, please come take prasadam. And Durvasa Muni said, okay, I'll come with all my disciples, but let me first go take bath in Yamuna and I'll come back. Now that was a problem. Draupadi had eaten and there was nothing left in Akshay Patra. And Krishna had to protect his devotees. Krishna appeared right away. And he said, just give me whatever is stuck, even in that Akshay Patra. Just little piece of spinach was stuck. And Krishna ate. And according to scriptures, Yasmin Tushta Jagat Tushta. If Krishna is pleased, the whole world can be satisfied. And when Krishna ate that little piece of spinach, all the sages, including Durvasa, They were all completely satisfied. They were thinking, we don't even have that much room that we can put in a single grain of rice in our mouth. Completely full. We cannot we cannot go to Yudhishthira Maharaj and insult him by not eating. He must have prepared wonderful items. This is how Krishna protected his devotees. So the Lord does not excuse mistreatment of a pure devotee. So this we always have to remember. But the devotees, they are like fire. But at the same time, they're like water. In the previous verse we studied how they're like water. They can purify anything and everything. Kvachit chana, kvachit spashta, upasya shreya ichhatam, bhukte sarvatra datrinam, dahan praguttara shubham. A saintly person, just like fire, sometimes appear in a concealed form and at other times reveals himself. For the welfare of the conditioned souls who desire real happiness, a saintly person may accept the worshipable position of spiritual master. And thus, like fire, he burns to ashes all the past and future sinful reactions of his worshippers by mercifully accepting their offerings. A saintly person prefers to conceal his exalted spiritual position, but to instruct the suffering people of the world, he sometimes reveals his own greatness. This is compared to a fire that sometimes burns unnoticed beneath ashes and sometimes blazes openly. Just as fire devours the ghee and other offerings given by the performers of sacrifice, similarly, a saintly person accepts the praise offered by his conditioned followers, knowing that in fact all praise is meant for the Supreme Lord Krishna. Although an ordinary person immediately becomes puffed up and foolish when he is praised, such inauspicious tendencies within a saintly person are burned to ashes by his attachment to the absolute truth. In this way, he is just like fire. So this Srila Prabhupada showed by his example again and again. Although when he came to America and his well-wishers or people who came to know him, his students, they didn't know who is Srila Prabhupada, what his greatness is. And in the beginning days, at 26 Second Avenue in New York, he's living in a small apartment. And all these newcomers, they would come and Prabhupada would give them lecture. And Prabhupada would cook for them, feed them, serve them, feed them. And then after they leave, Prabhupada would clean their dishes also. Besides cleaning all the cooking utensils and cleaning the room. They didn't know how to serve a sannyasi, a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada. But with Prabhupada's compassion, Prabhupada's serving mood, Prabhupada's well-wishing mood, Prabhupada's spirituality, one day, I think it was Satsvarup Maharaj, whatever his previous name was, he said, Swamiji, do you want us to help you with cleaning or something else? And Prabhupada said, yes, I was waiting for somebody to ask. Prabhupada didn't even tell them what to do. He wanted it to come from within themselves. So then they started cleaning or doing other services. This is mercy of Prabhupada. And slowly, people came to know. I mean, we still don't know the exact position or the greatness of Prabhupada, but whatever he has done in those 12 years, it's just beyond imagination. And no ordinary person can do that. And he is still accepting our services, our offerings, our prayers, our worship, as because in every temple his deity form is there. And through that deity form, he's still burning our sinful reactions. That is Srila Prabhupada. And he showed also how to worship him. I mean, gurus or saintly persons don't really show because that might people might construe that as, oh, he's very puffed up. But he had to train his disciples. He had to teach them how to worship their guru. And Prabhupada was accepting when he was with his disciples, he was accepting worship in front of the deities. Nobody has ever done that. And now he's accepting worship as his deity in front of the deities of Krishna. That's the unique position of Srila Prabhupada. No guru does that. We don't worship guru in front of the deities and the curtains are open. But we worship only Srila Prabhupada. Even Tulsi Maharani, we worship when the curtains are closed. You go to the temple, you notice this. But Prabhupada, we worship when the curtains are open. He is not an ordinary person, not at all. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll stop there. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila